All right, looks like we're at 12 o'clock noon, so we'll just go ahead and get started. I'm going to start the recording here as well. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sergeant Kevin Allen from Portland Police, and I'll be hosting today's media availability with Portland Police Chief Chuck Lovell and FBI Oregon Special Agent in Charge Agent Ramsey. Thank you all for being here on this Saturday. We'll start with some comments from the Chief and the SAC, and then they will take some questions. Today we'll be using the raise hand feature of Zoom. If you haven't used that before, here's how you use it if you're on a computer. You can find it by clicking on the participants button on the bottom of your Zoom screen. You'll see a list of all of us on the call appear along the right side. The raise hand button is at the bottom of that column. I'll call on those who have raised their hand in order. Our call manager will invite you to unmute. So when you're called on, you can open your microphone and ask your question of the Chief or the SAC. We do want to address as many questions as possible today, and we also want to be fair to everyone on the call. We ask that you ask one question at a time. Our call manager will mute you during the answer, just so everyone can get clean sound with minimal background noise. If you have a follow-up, please let me know in the chat, and we'll ask you to unmute to ask your follow-up, or you can type out the question in the chat as well. Of course, we invite you to ask as many questions as you like in the time that we have. Just raise your hand to call, and I'll call on you in order. This is not intended to be an open availability, so we're asking respectfully that you keep your questions to the topic at hand. So with that, I'll step aside and introduce Portland Police Chief Chuck Lovell.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I just want to share a few remarks and comments about what the Police Bureau is doing this weekend. And I'm glad to have SAC Ramsey here from the FBI as well. So this weekend, the Portland Police Bureau is taking part in a larger coalition involving community groups, city bureaus, and law enforcement to address gun violence. As we saw in Gresham last month, where 7 people were shot at a vigil for a gun violence victim, there are several vigils and funerals planned for Portland in the upcoming days as well. These vigils are credible targets for further violence, and our goal is really to de-escalate and lower the tensions in the community that are fueling this latest spate of gun violence that we're having. We've received some alarming information that's been shared with not only the city, but some of our community partners as well, that there are groups coming to Portland to engage in gun violence from out of town, and also that folks are being encouraged to do some retaliatory shootings in the next 30 days as a form of loyalty for some shootings that have happened before. So we want to make sure that we, the Police Bureau, in conjunction with our partners, are doing everything that we can to keep the community safe. There's a cycle of violence here that we're trying to break. There's retaliation and things of that nature that we're really concerned about, which is driving the actions that we're going to take this weekend. So we're collaborating closely with the Office of Violence Prevention, the Portland office of the FBI, Multnomah County District Attorney, several other community-based organizations, in an effort to really de-escalate and provide safety this weekend. Our Community Safety Director, Mike Myers, is overseeing this effort, and we're happy for his assistance. And this is really just part of a larger effort that we're engaging in. And we're doing our part to reassure the community that we want people to feel safe, to be able to go out and grieve and heal in a safe manner. We'll be out providing a high visibility presence and a deterrent to those who would come here and commit crimes. And I want to make sure people know that our goal is a message of safety. We want people to know that we're going to be doing our part to keep the community safe. We want people who would come here and engage in gun violence to know that we will be out, and we will be active, and we'll be looking to hold people who do shootings to account. That's all I have. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Then I'll hand it over for a statement from the Special Agent in Charge of Oregon, Agent Ramsey.
Great, thank you, and thank you for having us today. I'm certainly happy and proud to be here side by side, at least virtually, with Chief Lovell, our good friend and partner. Here's the bottom line. This is beyond a public safety crisis now. We said it was a public safety crisis 3 months ago. And unfortunately, this trend of gun violence in the metro area has continued. We've tried some innovative things of forming this Metro Safe Streets Task Force and really trying to enhance our investigative posture, both in response to ongoing shootings or recent shootings, but also to get ahead of them, to prevent the next shooting. Unfortunately, one shooting is too many, and that would have started, at the beginning of the year at this point. So we are now in a crisis mode where we are trying to call upon all of our partners. All of us in law enforcement certainly agree partnership has to be the way that we address this from our perspective. But that partnership needs to go beyond law enforcement. So we're essentially pleading with community groups, with faith-based groups, with elected leaders, with anybody out there that can have a way to get in front of the person that may pick up that gun and either commit retaliatory violence or indiscriminate violence and get them to put it down. We need to break this cycle of violence. So what is the FBI doing in this regard through the Metro Safe Streets Task Force? I think, as you've heard before, we're going to be paired up with the Enhanced Community Safety Team. We were last night. We will be through the weekend so that we will coordinate with on-scene supervisors when there is a shooting incident to respond, to gather as much information, evidence, witness statements as possible so that we can pursue those leads right then and there and have no delay in our investigation so that hopefully we can identify the people involved and hopefully put a stop from them committing another act of violence. What we saw earlier in this week, where it wasn't just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 shootings, but even more, we can't have. This area, this city, the metro area is not supposed to be this way. We all agree that. It's an obvious statement to make. But now it's at the point that if we don't all step up together, law enforcement does its role, partnering together. Law enforcement partners with the community, and the community does its role, partnering together. Hopefully we can put a stop to that. So again, we will be out there with our partners, with Portland Police Bureau, Multnomah County Sheriff's, Gresham PD, whomever, wherever we hear a shot or shot incident, a shooting incident, to make sure that we can pursue that investigation immediately. And again, hopefully put a stop to this. Thanks.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And now is a chance for us to open it up to questions. And the first one, I don't see your full name. It's just kind of a username. So whoever's
it's Christelle with KGW.
Oh, hi. Thanks. Okay,
Hi.
go ahead with your question.
So I just had a quick question because earlier this morning there was a shooting up in 119th and Stark. Was the coalition involved in that investigation, in that process?
So our team of ECST and our FBI partners, we're looking at all the shootings from this weekend together. Our goal is to, like SAC Ramsey said, really get speed to lead. So we can really look at these as they happen and get investigators on top of the information as quickly as possible. So any shootings this weekend, we'll have our folks on top of it. And we'll move forward kind of in this partnership to really jumpstart these investigations.
Okay, thanks. And I'm checking to see if FBI was on scene for this morning's shooting. I'm not 100% sure if they were there today.
I know that we're tracking it. I'm not sure if one of my agents was with one of the officers there, but we're certainly aware of it. I certainly got a report of it this morning.
Okay, yeah, that one happened at 7 something in the morning this morning, so it was a little outside of what we've seen with the evening events. So moving on then, the next question comes from Bridget Chavez. Bridget, go ahead with your question.
Sure. So this is either for either of you. We did have that shooting this morning and then another one. And we know that this team is in place to help as a deterrent, but we're still seeing these shootings. Can you be more specific about what you guys are doing to act as a deterrent? Because we still had 2 shootings this morning.
Yeah, that's a fair question. And let's be honest, we're not going to be able to deter every shooting or prevent every shooting or be on the scene of every shooting. We're going to do our best to be visible, be active, I think for us, we want to be information and intelligence led, and we want to use that information and intelligence to try to prevent the next shooting. And, we're talking about 8 officers, I think 3 FBI agents, and the ability to call in more should the situation dictate that. But I think, for the amount of shootings that we've seen, we're just trying to use our resources to their best use possible to try to keep these shootings from escalating even further.
I would add to that, Chief. The high visibility presence obviously is hopefully some measure of deterrent. But as he already said, it's not always going to be effective because some people are just intent on committing some act of violence, whether they've seen the police recently or they just saw them or they know that we're out there. So that's where the secondary phase of this deterrent, knowing that not only are we out there, but immediately we're following up on these leads, being intelligence driven, and then hopefully circling back around to that person or persons that were either involved in the previous shooting or perhaps maybe are involved in a planned retaliatory act of violence. That doesn't happen immediately, though. That effective deterrence of the investigation phase is going to take a day or 2 or 3 or 4. So we're hoping both of those. And again, in effect, though, it's not just a visible deterrence that we want to have. We want to actually have results. We want to take shooters off the street. We want to take the guns out of their hands.
All right, thank you. I see there's some folks with questions in the chat. So I think what we'll do Jim Redden next, Megan Allison, and then we'll go to Michael Russell from the Oregonian. So Jim Redden, you're next up. Go ahead with your question, sir.
Thank you. Could you be a little more specific about who these groups are that are coming to town? You're using the term groups. Are these gangs?
I would say these are gang-related shootings and gang-related retaliation. I mean, we've seen, throughout the course of the summer, when shootings have risen, and I'll give you just some context of the amount of shootings we've seen just in the past 2 weeks. In homicides, we're at 31 homicides for the year. This time last year, we were at 4. This time in 2019, we're at 3. So it gives you a sense of kind of the scope and scale of what we're dealing with as far as shootings. Just since May 1st, we've had 40 shots fired calls, 231 casings that have been flying through the streets of our community, 4 homicides and 14 people injured in those shootings. So, I think when I look at it as these gang-related shootings with retaliation, that's what's so troubling, because you have the potential for one shooting becoming 2, becoming 3, and that's really the worry for us.
And perhaps I would add that, this is where the FBI is going to try and provide that investigative support, as opposed to looking at these as singular incidents, making sure we're exploring, are these possibly connected? And that's where it comes also to seeing if there's any appropriate nexus to federal violations of criminal law. In fact, if we see gang members traveling here from out of state, certainly that automatically gives us a federal nexus. But again, even gang members that are involved locally in criminal activity, let alone shootings, certainly gives us that federal nexus as well. And then we have a conversation after that between ourselves, the Multnomah County District Attorney and the U.S. Attorney to find where the best venue is, but all with the hope that we're identifying these people immediately or perhaps before that shooting occurs.
Okay, thanks for the question. Moving on to Megan Allison. When you're ready, unmute and go ahead.
Hi there, thank you. So you mentioned that this partnership exists as a short-term solution. Does your bureau feel equipped to handle the current level of violence in the weeks and months ahead?
The bureau is pretty lean just in general. As you know, we've moved a lot of our resources to address gun violence. Our partnership with the MOU with the FBI is one step in that effort. For us, we've looked for ways to add to our gun violence response. And, up until this point, we've had to take those resources that we have existing and shift them to gun violence. And I think for us, if the gun violence continues at this rate, we're going to have to look really hard at what ways we're going to we're going to address it as far as if it's more resources, more officers, more partnerships or things of that nature. But I think right now, really, we're relying on our partnerships with community-based organizations, local law enforcement, and our federal partners.
Okay, next question is coming from Michael Russell at the Oregonian. Go ahead, Michael, when you're ready.
Hi, Chief Lovell. This question's for you. I'm just wondering how the response this weekend differs specifically in terms of numbers of officers or whether they're uniformed or not compared to a normal weekend. Because I know you guys already have existing partnerships with the FBI and other law enforcement.
Yeah, so this weekend we're going to have an additional 8 officers from our enhanced community safety team out. We'll have the ability to call more on an on-call basis if needed, and we'll have FBI resources out with our folks, which is something we haven't seen here a lot in the past. And we'll have the ability to call in extra folks on the FBI side as well. So that would give us a little bit more of a presence as far as numbers go. And I think, you know, for us, it's really in light of the information that we're receiving and in light of the concerns that we've been hearing from community as well. We want to just make sure we're doing everything in our power to contribute to reducing gun violence and de-escalating over the weekend.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. Was there anything else? We have a little bit more time today. Megan Allison, looks like your hand is up again. Go ahead with your next question.
Hi there. I just was wondering how you plan to look at things from a long-term perspective, addressing this as an ongoing issue.
Yeah, for us at PPB, we look at it as, you know, some of the most important work that we do. I've been in a lot of conversations with elected leaders, community folks, and I've always said that this, you know, keeping people in our community alive and safe from gun violence is important. I will shift resources as needed to make sure that we can address it as possible. But if it continues at this rate, I think there has to be some real conversation about what is the appropriate resource, what is the appropriate structure to really keep people alive. That's what we're talking about. 231 bullets flying through the streets of Portland in essentially a 2-week period is just not acceptable. And if it becomes an issue where we need more resources, I'm happy to go back and try to fight that fight. But to me, you know, we're coming into the summertime, which is typically a busy time for gun violence. And as we reopen too, as a city, you'll have more gatherings where people are present. And we've had a fair amount of shootings that result from those type of gatherings and events too. So I don't know how that will play into the numbers, but it's something we're currently looking at, something we're always really looking at and concerned with. And, you know, right now it's really very high on our list of priorities.
Okay, and SEC Ramsey, of course, feel free to hop in if you have anything to add to these answers. Jim Redden has his hand up again. Go ahead, Jim.
There were a series of vigils planned for Portland parks to mourn everyone who has died over the past year, including COVID victims, ending up with a big one at Pioneer Courthouse Square. Are these among the vigils that you think are potential targets?
My thought is that those are less concerning to us for this type of violence that we're speaking about. I think a lot of the ones we're really concerned with have more to do with the victims of previous gun violence incidents.
Okay, thank you for the question. We'll do a last call for any more questions for our group. Michael Russell, you have another one? Go ahead.
Yeah, Chief Lovell, with all these bullets flying around, I'm just curious, you know, how much the general public should be concerned for their own safety and also, you know, what they can do to keep themselves safe this weekend.
Yeah, I would say it's a concern because, you know, these bullets are flying around with, you know, essentially no name on them. And, you know, you're out and about in certain areas or, you know, just trying to do your normal day-to-day stuff. and bullets are flying around. That's definitely a concern. I think for people, it's just really being aware of where you're at, your surroundings, being careful. It's a very difficult thing to predict where this gun violence is going to take place. But I think just in general, people should just be aware and try to do everything they can to put themselves in safe situations.
And maybe I would add to that, we want the community to be reaching out to law enforcement, right? We know that there have been plenty of incidents that have happened where we've had any amount or a tremendous amount of reluctance on the part of people that saw something that don't want to share that with law enforcement. And we know that there are people out in the community right now that know something about some of these shootings and perhaps know something about an individual's plan to commit another shooting beyond that. We need people to reach out to law enforcement. I know that's seemingly sometimes not a popular thing to say, but look, this is where this partnership aspect comes in. Law enforcement has to be part of the solution. It's not the only solution here. So we do want people to reach out to law enforcement if they have any information, be it for a prior shooting or, God forbid, something that's being planned or some individual that is at risk for perhaps being involved in the next shooting. Certainly, I don't care where people call. If they want to call the Portland Police Bureau, or if they live in unincorporated Multnomah County, call the Sheriff's Office, or if they're in Gresham, call Gresham PD, or if you want to call the FBI with information, certainly you can call us locally for our FBI office here at 503-224-4181. And we can always accept tips online at tips.fbi.gov. But this is where this solicitation, this plea with the community, please reach out to law enforcement. Help us stop that next incident. Be part of the solution with us.
Okay, I will wrap it up there, and unless anybody else has a last minute question or statement, they're welcome to join in. Okay, with that, thank you everyone for joining us on this Saturday. If you have any further questions, you can direct them to me at ppbpio@portlandoregon.gov, and we'll seek out answers for you. Thanks again.